Our next group are the angiosperms, which first evolved in the Jurassic period of the Mesozoic era and became the dominant plant form by the Cenozoic era, which is the era we live in. There are over 300,000 species of angiosperms, making them the second largest group of organisms after the insects, which is no accident considering that most insects and angiosperms co-evolved with one another. Angiosperms owe their success to two features exclusive to this group: flowers, which attract animals to assist with pollination, and fruits, which envelop seeds, providing them with protection and nourishment. Flowers are modified leaves that function as reproductive organs of angiosperms. The parts of the flower include the sepals, which collectively are called a calyx and appear leaf-like. These enclose the unopened flower. Petals, which collectively are called a corolla, are modified leaves that are colorful and used to attract animals to help with pollination. The gynoecium is the female portion of the flower and is composed of three parts: the stigma, which is sticky and receives pollen; the style, which is a tube by which the pollen travels to get to the ovary, where the unfertilized eggs, called ovules, are housed. The stamens are the male portion of the flower and is composed of two parts: an anther, which is the head region that makes pollen containing sperm, and the filament, which is the stalk holding the anther upright. Stamens and carpels later became enclosed by modified leaves called sepals and petals. The four structures then diversified to produce a fantastic array of sizes, shapes, and colors. Specialized cells inside flowers also began producing a wide range of scents. Flowers are adapted to increase the probability that an animal will perform pollination. Pollination is defined as the transfer of pollen from one individual's stamen to another individual's carpel. And carpels are the chambers of the ovary, which will eventually become part of the fruit. So let's take a look at the life cycle of an angiosperm. If we start at the zygote region on the bottom right, you'll notice that the zygote is made up of 7 cells with 8 nuclei. There are 3 cells towards the top, 3 towards the bottom. The middle on the bottom contains the zygote, or the potential embryo at this point. The middle cell is a very large area called an endosperm, and it is made up with 2 nuclei. You'll notice that the designation 3N is there right now, and I'll explain what that means later. So after the zygote is formed, it then makes into an embryo, and it utilizes that nutritive tissue to help develop its growth. You'll notice that there's 2 leaves coming off of there. Those are called cotyledons, which transfer nutritive tissue to the embryo. These cotyledons are really important until the developing sporophyte produces its own set of leaves. Then the developing sporophyte, also known as the plant that you see, then forms into a mature sporophyte. And we're going to go in 2 different directions here. We'll start with the female portion first. So at the bottom of the carpel, or the ovary in this case, you'll notice that there is a megasporangium inside of the ovary. This will undergo meiosis to produce several megaspores. Now, only one of those megaspores is actually retained to become the potential egg. The other 6 are then going to become the other cells of the female gametophyte. And remember, the female gametophyte is made up of 7 cells with 1 cell in the middle containing 2 nuclei. If we go back to the anther, which is the male portion of the flower, it'll undergo meiosis to produce microspores, and microspores will then form into pollen grains. Pollination occurs when a pollen grain from one flower pollinates or attaches to the stigma, which is the top of that pistil, and it's going to create a pollen tube to head down towards the egg. Now, there's 2 sperm involved in this process. One sperm fertilizes the egg, giving it the 2N zygote designation, and the other sperm is going to travel to the endosperm region. And that's where that 3N comes from right there. And once that occurs, you're back to the zygote and the cycle starts over again. As seeds develop, the walls of the ovary thicken and form the fruit. In fact, botanically, anything that bears seeds is a fruit. Fruits are broken down into two types: fleshy fruits like berries, apples, grapes, and tomatoes, which are quite watery, and then you have rice, nuts, and wheat, which are all dry fruits, and that the fruit is not watery. While most fruits derive from ovary tissue alone, others have portions of the flower formed around the fruit. In addition to the ovary tissue, the floral cup of apple flowers forms a meaty portion of the apple. Raspberries and blackberries are what we call an aggregate fruit made up of multiple ovaries. Pineapples form from a cluster of flowers, and in fruits are mostly made to help disperse the seeds. Dandelion and maple fruits utilize wind, and coconuts are transported by water. Many fleshy fruits are eaten by animals where the seed is passed through the animal's digestive system. In fact, many fruits require the enzymes of those animals in order to activate those seeds. And finally, others have burrs or hooks to help cling to animal fur or feathers. So now let's get into the three major groups of angiosperms. All angiosperms are in a single division called Anthophyta and form a monophyletic lineage. However, there are three clades of angiosperms. The first are the basal angiosperms, and are amongst the oldest of angiosperms, with many still appearing as they did when angiosperms first evolved in the Jurassic period. Most basal angiosperms can be divided into one of three clades: Magnolias, which also include the Tulip Poplar, which is Kentucky's state tree, are all trees with shiny leaves and large flowers. The flowers have parts in large clusters, unlike the other angiosperm groups with carpels above the stamens. Water lilies are another basal angiosperm, which includes the water lilies and water lotuses. And another group are the laurels, which mostly grow in warmer climates and have fragrant leaves and small flowers. Mountain laurel is not a true laurel, but spicebush and sassafras are both native Kentucky laurels, both with fragrant leaves. Cinnamon, avocado, and bay leaf are all food basal angiosperms. Monocots are plants that have the following features: they have one cotyledon in their seeds, veins that run parallel to each other, and floral parts arranged in threes. They finally have fibrous roots, not a single taproot or enlarged root. Woody tissue does not exist in this group, and the only trees, quote unquote, are palms. Palm wood is really just fibrous compared to tree wood. Monocots have vascular tissue scattered throughout the stem cross section, but form an organized ring in the root surrounding pith tissue. Example monocots include grasses, orchids, true lilies, and palms. Foods such as cereals, rice, corn, sugarcane, bananas, and pineapples are all examples of monocots. Eudicots make up 2/3 of all flowering plants and are characterized by the following features: two cotyledons in the seed, veins that form a branched network, floral parts that are in fours and fives. Eudicots can be herbaceous, meaning green, or woody. Most trees are eudicots. Examples of eudicots include oaks, maples, azaleas, sunflowers, and roses. Foods made from eudicots include apples, pears, maple syrup, grapes, and pumpkins. And in our next video, we're going to see the role seed plants play in their ecosystem as well as humanity.